Hello, welcome to the Analyst Inside Cricket with me, Simon Hughes.
And I'm Simon Mann.
And this is our look back at the first day's play in the Test match between England and India at Headingley, which, Simon, didn't go well for England. Really, from the point at which the toss fell, actually. When the coin fell down, I wonder whether both captains were hoping to lose it. Obviously, Ben Stokes won it. Do you think he made the right decision without hindsight?
That's a really interesting question. Look, England have done this before and it's worked for them. I think that's one thing we should say right at the start. I think we should give some context. I must say, I felt good conditions for batting, hot weather leading up to the game, good looking pitch. The modern way is to put teams in if you see a bit of grass around. But the traditional way over many, many years of Test cricket is take use of a decent pitch, first up, get a huge score, bat the other side out of the game, bring in the scoreboard pressure aspect to it. When England won the toss this morning, put India in, they did not have 359 for 3 in their minds, even though there have been occasions recently where England have batted second. There's one occasion at Trent Bridge where they put New Zealand in and they made 550 and England still won the game. So, it's possible to win despite the fact that teams score big in the first innings, but you don't put the opposition in expecting them to score 359 for 3 after the first day.
Yeah, and actually that's an interesting point. And I suppose also one should take into account, I mean, obviously players, teams, they look at data a lot these days, don't they? And probably for the last 10 years, especially the Headingley pitch has, if not got better, then stayed the same for most of the 5 days. And actually, if you look at the average scores made at Headingley per wicket, they actually go up in the last 10 years per day. They start at about 28 runs per wicket and go up to 40 runs per wicket on the 5th day on average. So you can see why England were thinking maybe best to field first and utilise the fact that the pitch doesn't deteriorate by chasing a score on the 4th innings. There's also a stat I saw today from one particular site which actually accumulated all the Test match results over time, which is about 2,500 matches, and more matches have been won by the team batting last and chasing a score than they have by the team fielding last and bowling a team out. The ratio is about sort of 750 successful chases to about 620 bowled the team out in the 4th innings to win the match. So, but the data says perhaps the way that pitches are going, it makes more sense to field first. But I would say I'd counter that by saying if you have a very good bowling attack, then it makes the decision a lot easier. But India were thinking of fielding first. They've got Jasprit Bumrah, the best bowler in the world, who I'm sure would have bowled well. England don't. They don't have Anderson and Broad anymore. They have an untried bowling attack. And apart from Chris Woakes, who of course is a very seasoned performer, but the others are very much untried. And I just think it was a big risk, really, and it obviously didn't pay off. Maybe it will in the end when England chase down 400 or something, but I felt it was a risk with that bowling attack, and they were exposed, I thought.
I think you can say that definitely the attack was exposed on the decision to bat first or bowl first. Look, the last 6 Headingley Test matches have been won by the side batting second, but I've had a look at those 6 Test matches, and in those games there was probably around in terms of the build up, the overhead conditions, the nature of the pitch. There was some obvious logic in doing that, and actually the highest score by a team batting first in the last 6 Headingley Test matches was New Zealand's 329. A game England won, Australia made 263, India 78, Australia 179 in the famous 2019 game, Pakistan 174, England 258 against West Indies. Look, England are going to be looking at something, double some of those scores, at least double some of them. And actually, of those 6 matches, 4 teams batted first and then went on to lose the game. So you can see your stats as well. You can see the logic behind it. But again, with an attack that England have got, which is a bit untried, is inexperienced. It's not perhaps as good as some of the attacks they put out in recent years, it is going to be tough. I think everyone accepted it was going to be a tough day, but they were probably thinking, can we bowl India out for 350, something like that, and that might have been acceptable. Of course, you want to do many fewer than that if you possibly can. I mean, last time India here, I mentioned they bowled them out for 78, but you know, but this is going to be what's it going to be? It's going to be it could be 600, couldn't it? It's
Mm.
shades of 2002, Headingley 2002,
Yeah.
when India made 628 for eight declared. Dravid, Tendulkar, and Ganguly all made hundreds. And there were four England hundreds as well from their four bowlers, Hoggard, Caddick, Tudor, and Giles. It has that feel about it, doesn't it? And good luck trying to win the
Mm.
game. If the opposition score 600. England did do it in Pakistan, in Multan, in that first test match, where Pakistan made 556 in their first innings. That was back in October last year, so as recently as that. England, as we know, scored 823 for seven declared. Pakistan at the close of that first day were 328 for four. So you wouldn't necessarily think that England were going to win the game by an innings, which is what they did. So look, there's the context. And I think we've given the context behind England's decision to field first.
Yeah.
It doesn't look a great decision at the moment, and it might not look a great decision by Monday, Tuesday, something like that. But that they have been doing it. There is context, and there have been big scores where England have then come back and challenged that big score, and that's going to be the challenge for them. But there is the Jasprit Bumrah factor. And there is the India factor. They're good. You have to be good to
Mm.
get in this Indian side. It's a massive country with great competition. And so, yeah, what a challenge ahead for England in the next 4 days of this Test match.
Of course, there's a hunger there as well because they haven't very often won series in England, have they? And new captain wants to stamp his mark, stamp his authority on proceedings, and of course he did. Shubman Gill with an excellent hundred, an unbeaten hundred as well. So there is a lot of opportunity and aptitude and ambition for this. From this India side, it's funny. I was just thinking back to the time Nasser Hussain put Australia in Brisbane, 367 for two it was that day. So England had gone slightly better
364
than
for
that.
two.
364 for two. So England have gone slightly better. At least they've taken another wicket, 367 for three, but not much better. And that game was one-way traffic. In fact, most of the series was one-way traffic after that, wasn't it? So England started off. I thought they could have done better actually, and in a way, their slight rawness or naivety or youth of the opening bowlers, especially Carse, was shown up slightly. I think in that opening spell, I thought he bowled well, but he didn't make them play enough. And I think Bumrah would have taken early wickets because there was something there for about 10 overs. And actually, the ball that just started to swing, didn't it? And probably 10th or 11th over. But England didn't really make them play. Wokes wasn't quite on it. And Carse bowled well, but not quite incisively enough. Didn't make them play enough. They left well, didn't they? KL Rahul, such a fine player, gave them a solid start. And obviously Jai as well, an absolute ingenue. At the other end, played and missed a few times, but generally looks solid. And you get so much value for your shots as well. I mean, England tried to pitch it up, but the bunts down the ground, the eases through the offside soon got the score going, and it looked like it was going to be 91 for none or 100 for none at lunch, didn't it? Till those two early wickets or late wickets in the first session just gave England a tiny bit of hope. I was watching the Betfair percentages of potential winners, and it started at the beginning of the day with England at 60% likelihood of winning, and India about 35% or something, and the draw about 5%. But within 12, 15 overs, those figures had shifted, and by the lunchtime, India were actually more than favourites. They were up to about 50% likelihood of winning, and England had gone down to about 40%. So you could see the shift and the balance in momentum and the balance of power shifting in just that morning session, even though England did take those two late wickets.
Yeah, and that was because of the suggestion that India were going to get a big score, even though they lost those two wickets. It was, I mean, just on England's sort of bowling in the start, in that first sort of hour or so, okay, there was something there, and there was eventually a little bit of swing, and there was some swing after lunch as well because it clouded over, and you thought, well, England might better get something going, but also they were up against two quality batters, aren't they? I mean, Jaiswal, he mentioned, says the engineer. I mean, he is going to be, like, he already is a pretty good player, but he has the hallmarks of being an
Mm.
absolutely top class player for a long time. He's hungry as well, and KR Rahul, we know how solid KR Rahul can be. He's got that experience. He's in his 30s now. He's been there and he's done it, and he's played in England before. So these are two good players up against Chris Wokes, who's probably shorter gallop. Bryden Cast hasn't played much cricket, hasn't played much Test cricket. Josh Tongue, likewise, what is in his fourth Test match. Ben Stokes bowled before lunch at 6 over spell. I actually thought he was the pick of England's bowlers today. I thought he looked really good. He looked good at Trent Bridge as well. He looked thick today, and he looked a threat. He looked as though he could take a wicket, not necessarily with every ball, but he looked a threat in every over. Whereas he couldn't necessarily say that about some of England's other batters, other bowlers today. But in India's batters, they're quality players, aren't they? I do feel sorry for Sai Sudarshan in his first
Mm.
Test match today. So he got the nod at number 3, leading run scorer in the IPL. And what do you know it? He's out fourth ball, caught down the leg side. Although that was a plan from England. They did have 2 leg slips in. Sometimes you think, oh, caught down the leg side. It's a bit of a strangle, but they were kind of bowling for it. They must have seen something there with Sudarshan because they did have 2 leg slips in. And well, it's a tough day, isn't it? I mean, a great day for India. Besides Sudarshan, you'll see Gill 100, you'll see Jaiswal 100, Pant 65 not out, India 359 for 3, and you'll see a naught. But look, that's happened to players in their first Test match, hasn't it? They've been dismissed for naught. It's happened before to top players, and it'll happen again. And it happened to Sudarshan today. So it's just
Mm.
one of the sort of sort of real tough natures of cricket and Test cricket.
So one element we're going to add to this podcast during this series is what we're going to call the Betfair Exchange, where we have a debate about an issue that we don't entirely agree on. Actually, today I thought Bashir, who came on to bowl sort of like primarily after lunch, was just a bit tame. I just thought he looked ordinary. I mean, he has looked good. Admittedly, in that Trent Bridge test, he was threatening. He won man of the match. He turned the ball, but it was against Zimbabwe batsmen. And today, although he didn't actually concede a lot of runs, he only conceded 3 and over the day. I just thought he looked innocuous. Really, I know it was a flat pitch, but I thought the batters just milked him. Almost, they actually didn't want him to be taken off by assaulting him. So they just knocked him around quite comfortably and didn't, make sure he didn't make any inroads, but they just kind of sat on him a bit, really. So I thought he looked innocuous.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. Actually, I think he actually bowled pretty well. I thought he had good control. One of the problems he's had in the past, I think, is that he's bowled a couple of bad balls and over. He's bowled a couple of short balls and over, just easy get outs for the batter. They can knock him for 4, square with the wicket, or pull him for 4. It's the first day of the match. It's a good pitch. I actually thought he gave Ben Stokes some control, and India respected him. Okay, they saw him last time in India, and there were times when Bashir bowled well. There were times when India got on top of him. I actually thought it was quite promising from Bashir today. They did get after him a little bit towards the end of his spell, but he actually allowed Stokes to rotate his seamers from one end, and Bashir held an end. He bowled 21 overs. He didn't come on until 39 overs when the score was 159 for 2. So that was quite tricky for him as well. Batters who were in, and I mean, I think compared to what we've seen recently from Shoaib Bashir, it was actually a more encouraging day. I'd quite like to see him bowl last on this pitch. He bowled 21 overs, 4 maidens, 0 for 66. There were a few at the end when they got after him, and the odd bad ball. And you're right, India were a bit passive against him, perhaps, but that's perhaps because he didn't bowl much rubbish today. He didn't bowl many bad balls, and so I thought it was like a quietly encouraging day for Shoaib Bashir. I think you're being a little bit unfair to him.
Well, but this is a test match, and you have got to pick bowlers who are going to be threatening. And to me, he wasn't. I know he's young; he'll get better. But today, I just thought he looked impotent. Really, maybe he'll come in the second half of the game. Let's hope so, because otherwise, he could be a passenger in this Test match. So let's talk about India's batting a little bit. Obviously, we've mentioned Jaiswal and we've mentioned KL Rahul. What about Shubman Gill? What a fantastically regal player he is. His first Test as India captain. Must have been some pressure, must have been some nerves, must have been some, some hope that it would all turn out like a fairy tale on his first Test as India captain. And, well, it was a fairy tale. He hardly put a foot wrong. He played some most delicious shots. I mean, he's very pleasing on the eye, of course. I think England were hoping he might show that vulnerability to the ball nipping back, and they tried that. They tried to get him sort of moving across his stumps and then get one to nip back, but no one had that kind of penetration really today. They needed a Jofra Archer, because Jofra has done him a couple of times in the IPL, and he's got that extra bit of pace, that extra bit of zip. But today looked, would you say, untroubled?
I would say his innings was controlled and silky, and he didn't look in much trouble at all. There was almost like inevitability about Shubman Gill 100 today. I thought he played beautifully. I mean, I've seen him play a lot in white ball cricket, and he looks magnificent in white ball cricket. He's produced some of the best white ball batting I've ever seen, but he's yet to, really assert himself in Test cricket. Consistently. He has played well at times. He has got hundreds in the past. But this is his opportunity now as an India captain. And they did not miss their previous number 4 today, did they? Virat Kohli, who, Shubman Gill slotted in at number 4, came out after lunch, played magnificently, and he's still there with power to add. He's 127 not out at the close, and Rishabh Pant took it on as well, smashing Ben Stokes back past him second ball, and then playing quite conservative. That every now and again he would take on the bowling. He brought up the 300 with a 6. He smacked Chris Wokes for 6 in the last over of the day. Just give him the charge, bowling with a new ball. Last over of the day, you think, oh, just play it out, but he just hacked one into the leg side. So Pant, you never quite know what you're going to get. He's 65 not out from 102 balls, but Gill and Jaiswal, absolutely magnificent. I mean, they are the future stars of India's batting. Well, they're the current stars, really, but they suggest longevity, both of them. And we've seen that for a while now, haven't we? With Gill and Jaiswal emerging as well. Brilliant last time when England come up against them. I mean, in a way, Yoz, you could say it was kind of like it was laid out nicely for India today. We've laid the weather on, haven't we, perfectly for them. It's been nice and dry, nice and warm, lovely batting pitch, and England asked them to bat first. So yeah, in a way, they were, and they got quite an inexperienced attack. A lot in India's favour today, and they said, "Well, thanks very much. We'll have a bit of that." And they put India in a very dominant position at the close of play.
Yeah, it was always like rolling the red carpet out for the Indian players today, wasn't it, actually? And Shubman Gill becomes the 5th Indian captain to score a century on his first Test in charge, joining Vijay Hazare, Sunny Gavaskar, Dilip Vengsarkar and Virat Kohli. Virat Kohli scored 200s in his first Test in charge, 115 and 141 against Australia in Adelaide. So Shubman Gill is the 5th man to do that, score a century for his first Test as India captain. And it was just it was an immaculate innings, wasn't it? I mean, it has so much poise and elegance and refinement, the way he eases the ball past the bowler down to long on, caresses it through the offside. That pull shot he plays is quite interesting. It's sort of off the front foot, a sort of flat bat pull, kind of almost swatting the ball away from him from sort of chest high, which I believe he learnt using a tennis ball, which they used to wet a lot in his hometown and skid off the surface. And he was very good at playing that pull shot from not far short of a length. Doesn't have an obvious weakness. I mean, I know he's been out a few times for that nip backer, but there wasn't any sign of that today. And, it just looked a lovely innings. I mean, Pant, I don't know what it must be like to be the next man in when Rishabh Pant is batting. You must be up and down in your seat a bit. But because you don't know what he's going to do. There was one shot he tried to reverse lap. No, he tried to lap Chris Wokes, didn't he? And the ball just grazed his pocket and went over the top of the stumps in the last couple of overs of the day. The last player I remember, talking to about not playing for the close was Dean Jones, the Australian who played for Durham. And he used to say, he used to love it. He never wanted a night watchman. He always used to love going into bat with 5 overs to go, number 3, if one of the openers was out. Because he said, oh, yeah, they're going to have an attacking field and I can play lots of shots. But actually, England didn't have a particularly attacking field to Pant. They had men back at deep square leg and long on and stuff, and he just hit it over their heads. Amazing performance. I suppose it shows that India have bought into the kind of Bazball idea. The fearlessness of someone like Pant is something that is quite unique, I suppose, to Indian cricket. Really, to have that ambition to play those sort of shots. Very few others do, apart from the Bazball era of the England team.
Yeah, I mean, Pant's approach predated England's Bazball, didn't it? But it didn't necessarily predate Brendan McCullum. Both playing in that really ultra aggressive way. India scoring to that 4.22 runs per over. It is a fast outfield, though. I mean, you do get value for your shot, so there is that in your favour. What about Jaiswal? I thought one interesting stat about Jaiswal's innings today was 88% of his runs on the offside. 88%. I mean, that seems extraordinarily high for a man who's gone out and made 100. You might think 60-40 or even 70-30, but 88% on the offside. And that obviously that shows where England bowled to him. And whenever he bowled short and wide, he absolutely clattered it, didn't he?
Yeah, and he doesn't look quite
he's
so
a
good when
talent.
you bowl into his pads or into his body. He got hit once, didn't he, in the ribs? Yeah. When you bowl into his body, he doesn't look as good, but somehow he manages to ride that apparent weakness. I mean, of course, in the IPL, if you bowl into his pads, he wallops it over deep square leg for 6. But here he was more restrained, and he tried to sort of fend it off. He does look a little bit kind of he gets into a bit of a tangle, doesn't he, when he's trying to play on the leg side, playing defensively. So maybe that's something that England can exploit. They just didn't have quite the skill today to exploit that. At one point, Josh Tongue tried a few balls into the wrist, but he wasn't that consistent. And in the end, Jaiswal rode the problem. It reminded me a little bit of the way people used to bowl at Steve Waugh, because he had a reputed weakness to the short ball, but he, again, worked out a method and he got away with it and obviously scored thousands of runs. So it's not necessarily a weakness so much as just an area that he isn't so proficient in, really. I mean, he's, again, a wonderful player to watch, actually, and gave India such a great start. So, we saw overall a real shift in the balance of expectation over the day's play.
Yeah, well, India have got a great opportunity, haven't they? Fantastic opportunities to win this match, get a big score, and then put some pressure on England's batting lineup. And we think we know how England are going to play. They're going to play aggressively, which gives a fielding side, a bowling side, an opportunity. I think one of the interesting things there is that the draws actually come in a bit. There's just the possibility that, okay, it's a flat pitch and England are their strong suit is in batting rather than bowling, and there are one or two question marks about the Indian attack. A few rookies there as well. In terms of Prasid Krishna, for example, they've got the experience of Jadeja and Bumrah and Siraj, but how are they going to go in English conditions? You think England should be able to score on in these conditions, and if that's the case, then are we going to get a lesser spotted draw? There's perhaps a bit of rain around as well. A lesser spotted draw. There's only been one draw, as we know, under Ben Stokes. Anyway, look, it's not a great likelihood at the moment. You'd say India are really well placed to put some pressure on England. But I mentioned at the start of the podcast, we have seen England fight back from situations like this, even fairly recently. So you wouldn't rule it out. But can they do it against a side of this quality? To do that, they'll need to bowl well in the morning. They'll need to take every chance. What we haven't discussed, Yoz, is the couple of chances that slipped away from England today. There were two of them. What were those chances? Well, Gill on one was very nearly run out by Pope. In fact, if Pope's throw had hit the stumps, Gill would have been out, and then the ball went for overthrows, actually went to the boundary. He got 5 runs, and he could have been out. look, it wasn't a straightforward run out opportunity, but it wasn't, also it wasn't the worst opportunity. And the other one, Jaiswal, was out LBW off a no ball in the 40s against Bryden Cast. It flicked the boot first and then hit the bat. I wonder whether England would have reviewed it, but it was out. And so, those just small things can change a day's play. So Gill on one, Jaiswal in his 40s, and look at them both making hundreds to put India in a really strong position. So, if England need to take every chance, and then obviously they need to bat well and they need to bat big.